Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on Mathematica. So this is going to be a quick video just kind of going over some things about Mathematica which might help you if you've used it before and need a brush up, or if it's your first time using it. Now in this class we're going to be using it quite frequently, but I'm setting up the homework so that there isn't a ton of Mathematica you actually need to do, like just raw code you have to write. I'm going to try to set things up so it's organized, and at most you're maybe typing a function in and some bounds to plot, or just defining a function, maybe solving, doing a derivative, but like nothing too crazy. Okay, so as we add in more stuff in the course, I'll keep adding to this document. And you can too. You can keep your own copy of this because this will be on Blackboard, and anything you do and you're like, oh, I that was cool, I learned how to do this, I might use it again, just save it into this document for yourself so you have it again. There's nothing wrong with kind of copying the code you've done before. So we're going to go through this, just skip around to whatever you need. We're going to start with this function, x plus 1 over x squared minus 1. So I already actually have this set up, but I'm just going to go through the entire thing with you just to kind of make it all. So first things first, when you see this line here, see how there's a little plus and this, that tells you you're in the Mathematica code line. So like this is what you need to see when you want to type code. What's really nice, here's a tip, is like let's say you've just typed something in text and then you're saying, oh well, I want to do Mathematica stuff now. All you got to do is hit the down arrow key on your keyboard, and that will automatically try to get you to one of these. Now it's a little weird if you, for instance, like pressed enter a bunch here, then that trick's not going to work because you've already pressed enter and given it more text lines. But watch what happens when I get to the last text line, I get Mathematica. So pretty nice to be able to just down arrow into a Mathematica line. So let's go back up here, down arrow into Mathematica. And so the first thing we're going to do is define a function. So here's how that goes. We're calling it f, open bracket, then x, the variable, because that's the variable we're using. Then we put in this little underscore, close the bracket, colon equals. So that's the start of defining any function you're going to define. Now, you keep going through calculus, doing a Calc 3, you can define functions of multiple variables, and then we have to talk about it. It's really not too bad. It's almost the same thing, just you add another variable. But for now, just this is it. Now you type in your function. And so there's a bunch of ways to do this. I'm going to introduce you now to something called the cap. That's the shorthand in the Mathematica manual. If you go up here, I know it's a little hard to see. It says palettes. You click on that, and then you do Classroom Assistant, the CAP, Classroom Assistant Palette. Okay, so that pops up. Now it'll look like this when it pops up, something like this. This has a ton of stuff you're going to use. Basic commands is what you'll use for most things, and you can see right away it's just got all these different functions, constants you can use, trig functions, all this stuff. And if you just keep thinking here, clicking through here, you'll see things like factor, solve. We're going to use those later. So that's you telling Mathematica, factor this thing, expand this thing, solve this thing. Then a very powerful thing we're also going to use, Mathematica, of course, can then also integrate things, take limits, all this stuff. So we're going to use these as well. We're not going to use any of the linear algebra stuff, but it's here. If you take linear algebra at some point, boom, you have Mathematica that can help you do stuff. Tables, I'm gonna go through an example of a table, but every other table I have you do on a homework, I will set up for you, so don't worry about this if you don't want to. And then we're going to spend a lot of time in here as well. So 2D, and then this is all the plotting. So plot is going to be what you use most of the time. But anytime you see something like this, what it means is there's more options. Now, we're not going to use pretty much any of these other options here. The reason that I click that button is because if I know, I just want to use plot, is because this allows me to kind of look at, okay, it takes in, I can do multiple functions at once, cool. All right, I'm going to need to be able to tell the variable and then min and max. And then OPTS just means like other options that you want to put in. But this gives you an idea of kind of like what's going in here. All right, we don't need that now, but we're going to get there in a second. All this extra stuff, but again, we're going to keep it simple in Mathematica. If you want to go real deep into this, you can do a lot of cool stuff, make nice pictures, and I'm happy to help you with that. But it's not going to be the focus of this class, going like super deep. The manual has a lot of good stuff in it, how to use many of these options. All right, I'll do them sometimes too and post the code, but you don't need it. So okay, so ton of good stuff there. Just to kind of open some other things, the writing and formatting in here, you know, when you're doing text, you can use this to do things like put frames on things, make things bold, change the text color, you know, just like a word processor, which is one way you can think of Mathematica is like a calculator and word processor built into one. Right? Typesetting. So this here is one place you can go to get a bunch of different like formatting options. Like, oh, I want to do a square root or a cube root, or I want to do like a power, things like that. That can really be helpful for you. Here are special symbols as you're typing you might want to use. You've got like stuff like multiplication, integral signs, so just like all this different stuff. You might use some, you might not use others. You want to do like a double-sided arrow, going crazy here. Awesome, you can do that. And then some other random things. And then there's just like a keyboard here, which I'm not sure why that's here exactly. But you got a ton of stuff, and you don't have to use all of it now, but feel free to play around a little bit. Okay, so how do we plate this function in? Well, we can start off just kind of like how you might think to type it and see what happens. So x plus 1 divided by x, and then you might stop here and be like, uh-oh, how do I do a square? Well, you can go into the cap here, but what I think will be very beneficial for you is to take a little bit of time to learn some of the shortcuts. And honestly, some of them are like really straightforward. Like if you were going to try to type x squared, what would you do? You'd do x caret and then the 2, right? Okay, so in general, to do that, you would probably do shift and then 6 to get a caret. But Mathematica allows you to do control 6. Look at that, and it puts it up there instead. Okay, so in Mathematica, what can be really helpful for you is control plus something is useful for creating functions, specifically doing division, powers, stuff like that. Okay, so that's how we did that. Control 6 got us that. All right, so we could see what happens here. Now, what did I just do? Because I just said something, right? But like, what happened? Whenever you define something, just define it. Tell Mathematica what it is. In order to make it happen, you have to hit Shift plus Enter. So just Shift and Enter at the same time to make Mathematica go. So you type in Mathematica code and want it to run, Shift Enter. Enter itself's not going to work. Shift Enter. Okay, very important. All right, so then what we can do is try evaluating. So I want to know some function values. What's f of -1? I type in f, open parentheses, the value I want to plug in, close it up. You'll notice there's no dash here. That's because that's only used in defining. That tells Mathematica, oh, this x, I'm defining something right now. If I just plug in -1 later or x later, it's just telling Mathematica, use it. I'm already defined it. Don't bother me with that. Just use it now. So watch, we'll Shift Enter. Ooh, so it says infinite expression 1/0 encountered, indeterminate. You might be looking at that being like, wait, what? Well, just plug it in yourself. What happens when you try to plug a -1 in here on the bottom of this? You're going to get 0. Okay, so that hopefully that makes sense, and you can see what Mathematica is telling you. It's nice. It literally tells you, listen here, you put a 0 on the bottom. Like, come on, what are you doing here? so you could see that. And so this is just trying to show you what that looks like. Let's try f of 0, -1, which you can check. Plug 0 in, I get 1. Plug 0 in, I get -1. Awesome. And then f of -1. Shift enter. Oh, did I do that twice again? I'm not going to cut this. It's comedy gold. F of 1. So again, you plug in 1. What ends up happening, right? You plug in here. You're going to end up getting a 0 on the bottom, infinite expression, 0 on the bottom. And this one says complex infinity. Sometimes Mathematica is going to tell you some stuff that you don't need to worry about. It's just not important. Look for what it says here. You're putting a 0 on the bottom. Something's getting messed up here. I can't really tell you what's going on. Okay, so there you go. That's plugging into the function. Hopefully not too bad. All right, so let's plot. So there's some directions here. Again, really nice to use the cap. Basic commands, right? I want to plot something. 2D, and then just plot. And so I'm just going to delete this and show you what happens, like what you should expect. So we're in here, right? I go here, I click plot, and it pops up and then tells me what I need. Tell me a function, tell me the variable, and then you have to give me some x values for me to draw the picture. Me here being Mathematica, even though I'm human, not Mathematica. So not too bad. There is something here I just want to show you because it's super useful once you get comfortable here. If you know, like, you want to do something, one thing you can do is just try typing in what you think the command would be. So like, let's say plot. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I think it's like plot something. I don't know. So I just start typing and watch what happens. Up pops this little menu, plot. Okay. There's a little sign here, a little I, information. You click that and it brings up a little help guide. Tells you what it does, gives you examples. This is actually pretty awesome, and you can go real deep into this. You don't need to, but like, look at all this crazy stuff. And then applications, like all these different crazy cool things you can do. So there's like a little help built into each function. The other thing that it does that's cool is, okay, like let's say like you're like, okay, I got plot, great, but you know, don't give me that whole big information thing. Like what should I plug in here? Open it up, and you'll see arrows pop up. So you can see them right here, right? Click that, and it'll just quickly tell you a couple of things that you can do with plot. Generates a plot of f as a function of x. This one is like, okay, how do I do several different graphs at once? Boom, right here, right? Now, there's other ones that are getting a little crazier here you don't have to worry about, but it's pretty neat. It gives you that kind of like, what could I do just quickly? Okay? So let's actually just do it. I don't know why I didn't leave a spot for this, right? Pretty good. So plot, and then what are we typing in here? So the function is f of x. Again, I do not need the dash anymore because I'm not defining it. I'm just telling it, Mathematica, use the plot. And then let's do -10 to 10. Why not? That's a pretty standard view. Then what do? Well, I just typed in Mathematica code, so what should I be doing? Shift entering. Don't forget the shift enter. And there you go. We get this nice plot. Cool. We got the function. We can check it out. We can change this by changing, here we could zoom in closer to the middle by changing these x values. But then there's a lot more you can do here. So we've got these options now that you can do, and it's really not that important to do these things, but it can be kind of nice. So what you do is you tell Mathematica, I want to plot, but I want to add stuff in. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to copy this plot command. We're going to bring it down here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a comma. Commas separate things for Mathematica. So you've given the original plot command. Now if you want to add anything in, comma. Plot range. This will fix the x and y values that get shown. Plot style. You can style the picture that you get. Make it dashed, make it bold, change the color. Ticks. Right? Up here, they just auto do the tick marks, but if you think this is too many, then you can change the tick marks to be every half. If this is not enough down here, you can change the tick marks to be every half down here if you wanted. anything you want to do, really, you can do with these. Plot labels is cool because it'll give you a little thing here that says this is the function f of x, which is kind of neat. So why don't we just put a couple of these in? Let me do plot style. You'll notice how I'm copying and pasting code a lot. That's because I'm a mathematician, which means I'm lazy, and also because I am not terrible with coding, and actually they also are lazy, funny enough. So copy and paste your code whenever you can. So there's color names down here, like just kind of what you type in. So let's make a purple curve, and then the styles. So there are some options for style. You know, there's like bold, dashed, stuff like that. Why don't we just do dashed? See what happens. All right, I think we've got it all in. Let's shift enter. And look at that. We've got a purple dashed line, and it's pointing now to say this is f of x. Now, you might be like, you're only graphing one function. Obviously, it's f of x. And I would say, all right, relax, but also good point. But again, we can do multiple functions in here, and so that is kind of nice to point things out. Like if you have a function and its derivative, it's nice to be able to point out which is which. So again, just some stuff you can do. The second to last thing is list plots. So this is super nice to have whenever you want to, on a specific graph, put a point and really emphasize that point. So in list plot, all you have to do is, you could just go get list plots right here, which is pretty nice, right? And so you can grab the list plot here. And then what you can do is, and this is a little bit weird, but if you want to put in a couple points, you put in the points in curly brackets, separated by commas, so hopefully that's not too bad. But then there's this like extra set of curly brackets at the end, which, you know, that messes students up sometimes. So just be careful there. When you're doing list plot, there's an extra set of curlies here, and then you start making the points inside. And what it'll do is it just at 1, 1, there's a point. 2, 2, there's a point. -1, 3, there's a point. So if you want to, you know, do points, you know, that's really not too bad. You can do that. So there's actually one more thing I didn't put on here that I want to show you. That's funny because it's called the show command. So something that's also very nice is the show command. So let's say you want this picture, but you also want to like do a specific point on here. So watch what we're going to do, okay? So we're going to do a list plot again, okay? And let's say I really care a lot about the point that's at x equals 5 on my graph. So watch what I'm going to do. 5, f of 5. Hopefully you're getting to see the power of this a little bit. And then remember, whenever you're typing in these points, you have that extra curlies. So don't forget the extra curlies. Okay, so let's just type that in. Cool, we got that picture. Now, what if you wanted to combine this one and this one together? Here's what you do. You stack them. I know it's a little bit weird, but there's no one command that's nice that puts this all together. So the way you do this is you define it. So I'm going to type in points, :equals. That tells Mathematica, all right, listen up, Mathematica. I'm about to define points to be something. So pay attention. Shift enter. Okay. Now I'm going to take this plot command, and we're going to get rid of this for a little bit. I'm going to take this plot command, and I'm going to say, okay, Mathematica, listen up. I'm going to call this graph f, and I'm going to define it here. So these two lines, what they've done is they have told Mathematica, all right, whenever you see points like this, this is what I mean. Whenever you see graph, I'm not writing this whole thing out. Just remember that's what it is. Now watch what we can do. Show graph f, points. So I've now told Mathematica, all right, show me what graph f looks like, but also show me points at the same time. And there you go. Look, I got a little point here. So you might immediately be like, well, that point sucks. Make it bigger, make it a different color. Well, guess what? We've talked about plot style. You could do plot style in here, okay? And And so that, again, this is all covered in the manual if you want to dig into that. But, just so you can see, we got all this cool stuff we can do. All right, last thing, which you can basically just skip if you don't have any interest in setting up these tables, because I'm always going to give you this code. So the way we set up a table is multi-step. First thing you do is you set up the table headers. So like x and f of x. We want that to say it at the top of our table, okay? So first we set that up and we give it a name. This can be whatever you want. Then we actually construct the table. And there's two main ways to do this, and they look like this. You make the table, and this is all just copyable code. And then here's where it changes. You can either tell Mathematica, I want x to be my variable, and here are the x values, plug these in. That's what I'm doing here. Plug in -1, -0.5, Or you can tell Mathematica, x is my variable, okay, but instead of giving you the full list of numbers, I want you instead to do something like start at 0, end at 1, and go by 0.05. Okay, so it'll start at 0, plug it in, and then go to 0.05, plug it in, 0.10, plug it in, and then it'll go. Now, when you're doing it this way, these steps are fixed, right? So it's not as nice in terms of kind of variability in these steps that you can get up here. But, it's still pretty nice and just a different way to do it. Then you put the table together, table form, you put your table name that you gave, then you type in table headings, none, and then the columns, because we don't need headings on our rows. We don't need anything like that. And then we create the table. Okay, so I'm going to actually do this. Shift Enter, Shift Enter. We'll do the first one. Shift Enter, and then Shift Enter, and there you go. Same thing happened, right? -1 and 1 it did not like, but it could plug in the rest of these values and figure out what's going on. So there you go. That's kind of cool. And you can play around with these numbers you want it to plug in, change this up if you want to, but this is what a table looks like for us. In the future, if you want to just copy these tables and do your own, again, I'm going to try my best to provide like all this stuff in things you have to work on. But this is something that you could just have copy, 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 and then copy. You copy all this and just change your function and the values you want to plug in as needed. And maybe you change this if your function's like g of x. But it's not too bad. So there's a lot Mathematica can do. Please don't be overwhelmed. Check out the first homework. I'm not asking you to do a ton, just setting things up, like defining a function, taking its value, graphing, stuff like that. So of course, just come talk to me. Once you get the hang of this, you get it quick, and then if you really like doing it, it becomes a very powerful tool, especially if you're going to take any higher math courses. The 3D visualization in here is pretty cool. It's a very powerful calculator in terms of like that kind of thing it can do, where it's just going to blow your TI-80 whatever out of the water with some of the stuff it can do, especially because it can do something symbolically that other calculators you might have can't, which is awesome. So any questions, let me know. Hopefully this was helpful,